Look, it's the same as anything. I suppose it's grassland management, hitting the covers at the right height, getting. Like if I oversow a paddock there in the spring, say I do one there end of April, I'll go back in at a 700 cover and graze it twice at 700, and then as the clover progresses, let the grass grow up, so that's kind of where you're trying to promote the clover to grow.
Hello, I'm James Dunne, and you're welcome to the Dairy Edge, the Teagasc Dairy podcast. We're bringing you the latest information, insights, and opinion to improve dairy farm performance. I'm delighted to be joined this week by Teagasc Grass10 Manager John Maher and recently crowned Sustainable Grassland Farmer of the Year winner, Patrick O'Neill. So thanks for joining us, lads.
No problem, James.
Thanks for having us, Jim.
Patrick, maybe to come to you first. Sustainable Grassland Farmer of the Year winner. It's an All-Ireland title for Longford. How did that come about?
Oh, look, I suppose last year I seen it being won, and I thought, just maybe I'm doing something right. Maybe I should try and enter this. So that's the way it came about. Look, by chance, I didn't think much of it, So threw my hat in the ring, and here we are now.
A bit of a background about your farm, Patrick, in terms of where you're farming, number of cows, so on and so forth.
Before I came farming, I was a carpenter by trade. I was living in New Zealand, and 2010 I came home with the idea of helping Dad out on the farm, and then in 2012 we joined the farm partnership. Back then, I suppose we were milking about 60 cows, and then we had beef stock and whatnot. And I suppose fast forward into today, we're milking 115 cows on the same block of land. No more than anybody, the quota's going kind of drove it on a bit as well. But like in 13, we put up a shed for an extra 60 cubicles, so it left us with 120 cubicles. And so then we started building cow numbers and getting rid of the beef stock and really start to utilise the grass that we could grow. And so then in 18, put in a new milking parlour and put up another shed for storage, and that's kind of where we're at now. Yeah, big focus on grass, So that's what drives the business here with grass. Yeah.
And in terms of the people involved in the farm now, Patrick, is it just yourself?
Myself and my wife Michelle, we have 4 kids, and then Dad is still knocking about. Look, we'd be lost without him. He's the backbone of the whole place, So I suppose the same with a lot of family farms,
Maybe to bring you in, John, and I know you're a judge for the Sustainable Grassland Farmer of the Year competition, which Patrick has won. What exactly were you looking for throughout the competition?
We have a number of sections, James, but I'm going to go straight to the kernel of the thing that Patrick just said, which impressed the judges now. Patrick said his aim was to utilise grass, James. And, what we saw on the day showed that, right? Now, his figures showed too, right? So, if you take, talk about utilising grass and the number of grazings and things like that, these were all good, James, very good in actual fact. And the figures will back that up when we get into all that. But I suppose for us then, James, like there's a number of sections, there are a number of judges, they all have their own areas, but obviously it revolves around grazing performance, but we can pick a lot of that up from pasture base already. But things we can pick up then are things like, the grazing infrastructure and how the farm is set up to graze. So you can have people who can grow tons of grass, but may not be able to utilise it well. That's why I picked up on Patrick's term about utilising grass, so that's important. Sward renewal, and we don't use the term reseeding because sward renewal now is a more broader term. It involves, clover, it involves other species, it involves renewal of existing swards as well, which we'll come to. Obviously, there's a piece on clover. Patrick would have known he was good on that from the previous winner, who was Dermot Fitzgerald and Clare, and who was excellent at clover. But Patrick was on a par now, no doubt about that. Then we come into the area that has evolved over time, James, quite a lot, which is sustainability. And this covers a number of areas from water quality to biodiversity to, the greenhouse gas emissions to technologies on the farm, land management, stuff like that, carbon footprint, nitrogen use efficiency, nitrogen surplus, so all those things start to matter more now as we go forward. Another big area then is the whole nutrient management section. I don't need to talk to you about that or Patrick about that, James. We know where we're going. We know the journey we're on. We know the direction of travel. We have to get this right. there's other pieces then, like, the financials, Cal Performance, FED do the piece on health and safety. So that's a quick summary of it now, James.
Yeah, and there's no doubt, I suppose.
It's broad.
Yeah, and it's probably changed. It's changed over time, John.
Oh,
I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah, the nutrient management plan or planning would have now carries more marks than it did in the past. The sustainability area has grown, and the clover area has grown.
What made Patrick stand out from a judge's perspective?
That's easy enough answer. If you go back in previous times, maybe an odd winner or category winner would have excelled in one area, but for Patrick, Patrick did well in all areas, James. That's other entrants and runners-up would have maybe fallen down an area or two, but in Patrick's case, it was good all around, to be fair to him now. Right, so it's not one particular area that would have stood out. It was all.
Tell us a little bit about the Grassland performance maybe in 2023 for our listeners, in terms of what sort of a year was it? How did you get on?
Yeah, well, look, sure, everyone knows, like, last spring was wet, but not half as bad as this spring. But like in saying that, we still grew 12 ton of grass. We grazed for 290 days, and we probably got 9 or 10 grazings out of most paddocks. So yeah, we be happy with last year. But we were down probably a ton on the year before, which I'm probably putting down to cutting back in maybe a bit early last year, on clover paddocks and stuff like that. So something to learn from and maybe address this year, So.
Yeah, you mentioned in terms of 12 ton of grass grown. What sort of level of nitrogen inputs was there on the farm last year?
Yeah, so like the whole farm, we probably used 150 units of bag N. So that would be where the farm is. Clover paddocks, you're talking, some of them might have only got 100 units of N. The most any of them would have got was 150, 160. So yeah, that's where we're at, yeah.
John mentioned earlier in terms of clover, and it's obviously something that you place great focus on in terms of the development of your farm.
Yeah, well, sure, look, clover was just back in 2018. It was kind of something I fell upon. Like I read an article where it can improve milk solids on the farm, and at the time, I suppose Shemi Nolan was a dairy advisor, good friend, good mate, very good advisor. I chatted to him about it, and he said, "Sure, give it a go." So that year in 18, now I didn't know much about clover, but when we set that, I'd say I done 3-4 rounds with no nitrogen, no bag nitrogen, just went with slurry, and then as the years went by, we learned more about it. But look, as today stands, it's still down there, still in the paddock, and there's 20% clover in it, so it does work. So
maybe to bring you in, John, on that, like you walked the farm last back end. It's obviously. So clover obviously going to play a very important role in terms of maintaining grassland production in the years ahead. Just your own opinion of Patrick's farm in terms of what he's doing with regards to clover.
Yeah, the big thing for us, the clover was there, James. That was obvious, right? We know the direction of travel in terms of nitrogen fertilizer inputs into the farm. They're only going to go one way. So we have to get our own nitrogen factory onto the farm. So we walk lots of farms, James, as you know, but the thing that was very good for us with Patrick was he managed to establish about 60% of the farm, I suppose by the end of 2023, with clover. And some of it's very good, and then there's obviously pieces he developed. But what really impressed us was that half of that clover came from reseeding, but the other half came from oversowing. Now, when we visit the farms in the competition, as you'll know, James, most people want to go the reseeding road, which we can understand, but it takes time. So Patrick was able to get a lot of clover onto the farm by using more than one approach here. That's why I use the term sward renewal. It's not all about reseeding. It's about, getting clover onto the farm. And it's not often you come across a farm where half the clover is established by reseeding and the other half is established by oversowing. It's normally, 80-20, 75-25, or 2/3, 1/3, all in favor of reseeding, which comes at a cost, and a substantial cost, and comes with a time challenge, because it just takes time to do that, where oversowing can speed up all this. And what we saw in terms of pastures that Patrick had oversown were very, very good in clover content. So that was important in Patrick winning the competition.
John, it's probably important to say there, like, not every paddock is going to take
No,
over.
True. And you outlined that.
You learn a lot from what you do wrong as well,
Yeah,
in my cases, there's lots of paddocks that have failed along the way, and you try them again, and they'll grow or whatever. Like, you know,
Well, we haven't
there's a
forgot
lot
your
of
famous
variations.
we haven't forgot your famous statement that you probably learn more from failure. All right, so
Yeah,
that's a
it's
fair
very true
comment.
though. Such in life, like, you know, if you
Yeah,
don't learn from what you've done wrong, I'd say you're fighting a losing battle. You know, so
and the other thing I need to say, James, here is Patrick's approach to this. A lot of people might do it, James, because the industry recommended or someone else is doing it, but we picked this up and we'll use it again, James. Like Patrick's motto on the clover was to start small and start with your best paddock. And I thought, you know, and more than me thought that now. That was a good way of getting going, James.
How do you decide what's being reseeded, what you're going to oversow, and I suppose how do you manage those swards then to make sure that it's as successful as possible?
yeah. Well, I suppose look at how we're picking, well, how we were picking paddocks at the start was our peas, K's, and lime, you know, and soil samples, like. And look at in the last couple of years, we've done a lot with, like, you know, spreading 18-6-12 after grazings, and then we put out probably 100 ton of lime 2 years ago. Last year we probably put out 60 ton, like, you know. So the whole farm as it stands now is optimal for P and K, like, you know. So we're 4s and 3s, and then our lime is probably at 6. I know some paddocks are up at 6.5, some could be down at 5.8, but like, that's kind of where you have to start when you're thinking about clover. Like, you know, there's no point putting clover in if you don't know what's in the soil to grow the clover, if you know what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah. So soil fertility is number one.
yeah, number one, yeah. And then look at as we're grazing, like, look, it's the same as anything. I suppose it's grassland management, hitting the covers at the right height. Like, you know, getting, like, if I oversow a paddock there in the spring, say I do one there end of April, I'll go back in at a 700 cover and graze it twice at 700, and then as the clover progresses, let the grass grow up, like, you know. So that's kind of where you're trying to promote the clover to grow. Then in the back end, like when we're closing off, like you can't leave every paddock close off early or close off late. Like, you're going to have to pick paddocks. So really what I do is the strongest paddocks with clover, I let a stronger cover grow on them so that the clover won't die back as much, you know. And then the lads with the lighter clover will be the last grazed and try and give them a chance, you know.
Doing the simple things well, I think, is your motto. If I'm right in saying that, I think you mentioned that to me.
Yeah, well, look at it. It's like, it is like, it's such as do the easy things right, and everything else falls into place, I suppose, you know. Control the controllables, like, you know, don't get hung up on little things. Like, that's kind of the way you look at it. Like, you know, there is paddocks there I done, and you thought, Jesus, there's great clover in that, and then 6 months later it's gone, like, and you're wondering, what did I do wrong? But sure, sometimes just nature goes against you. Like, it might have rained for 3 weeks after you oversown, it might be waterlogged, like, you know, your indexes mightn't just be where you thought they were, you know. There's little things, like, you know, so yeah, it's a learning curve, yeah.
You know from the conversation, James, that Patrick is modest about this. Like, but let's go back to one starting point here, James, that Patrick's a bit modest about. You know, the tons grown, James, is just about 12 tons, right? But he also said 9 grazings. So the average pre-grazing yield for 2023, and I can go back to 2022 and do the same story here, James, right, is less than 1,300, right? Now, if you want clover to establish, you have to have a lower pre-grazing yield. It lets light in. Patrick's mentioned about trying to get clover established. He goes in at lower yields to get it going. You know, there's a message in all this, right? And like 9 grazings in a difficult year is a fair achievement now. You know, and the Grass 10 is called Grass 10 because we're trying to achieve 10 grazings per paddock per year. So the grazing management piece, we've mentioned the soil fertility, but the grazing management piece is a key part of this too.
How are you managing grass through that main growing season? What's your steps, I suppose, to ensuring cows are going into the right covers as many days of the year as possible?
Well, I suppose it's down to your growth and your demand, like getting your demand as close to your growth as possible, like that, you know, not being overstocked, but being stocked high enough that you can utilize the grass. That's kind of where we're at. Like, we're trying to get into 1,400 covers if we can, like, you know. Last year we didn't take any paddocks for bales where usually we would be, like, you know. So last year was a slow year. We were probably down 1.5 tons on the year previous. So yeah, look, there's little things to be learned there on my behalf. There's probably a bit of nitrogen cut too early in the year, in the season. Not enough clover in the paddock, like, so you're probably talking 20% clover in the paddock before we start cutting back on nitrogen. So I probably went a little early last year. The farm is probably a little later getting going here, being up north of the country, yourself.
And in terms of that, in terms of setting up demand, where's that at? We're now at the moment, we'll say.
Well, at the moment we have demand of 65 there, so we're offering 18 kilos grass and 2 kilos of meal. We're growing there in the last 5 days. We grew over 72. So we're nice. We're very nice. We have farm cover there of 680 and or for livestock of 180. So we're very in a very nice spot at the moment now. So yeah.
Any surplus taken yet, or do you see surplus coming, or how's it looking?
Look, if growth rates keep going, I say if we start hitting the 80s now, we will be into surplus. But at the moment we haven't. But there's a few paddocks there, like I suppose everybody has year mark, and you want to take them out at some stage for bales there. The way I've got 2 grazings, half grazings, like the spring that we came this year was very unforgiving, wasn't it?
I was going to come to that in terms of how you're getting on, but maybe before I do, animal performance, how is that? At
the moment we're at 1.95 mixed solid, so yeah, we're happy enough. We took an awful hit in April. We were back probably 3 litres a cow in April, so it's really only turned there in the last 2 weeks. We only went full time to grass. I think it was the 25th of April. So it's tough going now. Tough spring.
Your target now really is to hold on to that performance for as long as you can, I suppose. With
that's it. Yeah, keep them at that as long as we can. Yeah, sure.
The spring, you mentioned it. It's tough. It's one we sort of want to forget, but often it's no harm to look back on it and say, what did we learn? How did you get on? Grassland Farmer of the Year, surely it was all okay, huh?
I wish. It's great having grass, but if you can't get out here, it's not much good. Look, what did we learn? We learned that you couldn't have enough good quality silage in the yard. That's one big thing, it's enough to have silage, but to have quality silage is a must after this spring. And last spring was tough enough, but this spring, like usually here, you're talking Paddy's Day, you're out full time at grass, and you're looking ahead, not back. It was middle of April before we started to look ahead, I think, this year, so it was very tough.
On off grazing all the time pass and just
look, you're on off grazing usually month of February, you'll take that, maybe a few days in March, but this year you're on off grazing and you're off for a week or two as well in the middle, which is very hard work. There's a lot of extra work goes into getting cows out, but in saying that, we were getting out most days for 3 hours, but it's tough going. You have to be resilient now, that's for sure.
John, maybe to bring you in on that, in terms of I've been on Pat's farm before myself. The farm's well set up with regards roadways and access, and that plays a vital role in terms of, I suppose, getting cows to grass when conditions maybe aren't as favourable as we'd like.
Oh, it's huge, James. If ever we learned a lesson, last autumn was bad enough. The spring was worse. But Patrick mentioned these 290 days of grass. He wouldn't be able to do that unless the infrastructure was good. There's central roadways on the farm. The paddocks are not too deep, so to go from the roadway to the back is not far on most of the farm. Now, we all have challenges with the odd paddock, but the farm was well set up for grazing, gapways, water, distances, walks, good roadways. All the things that you need. Sometimes people have the network of roadways, but they're in poor repair or getting poor repair because of the wet. We were there last autumn. I thought things were very, very good now, to fair, James. Well thought out, in terms of the approach to dealing with the weather, and how the cows were conditioned to graze. They're all the factors that you need, but the grazing infrastructure has, in terms of marks, has declined over time in the competition. But it is Aidan Brennan that does this with us in the competition. But to be fair, this is well laid out farm now, very, very well laid out. Yeah, and that's not something that that requires savage thinking about. It's just a matter of having the roadways and water trucks and the gaps in the right place, James. That's all it is. And everybody's good around the yards. The real challenge comes at the end of the farm. That's what the judges will have noticed over the years of the competition, and that's where you come unstuck. It's easy to pick off the easy ones and close to the yard, but when you get further out and the weather's against you and the other ones by the yard are grazed, that's where the game gets won and lost then, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to make one comment, James, that Patrick made there, about the grazing management, and the question you asked is very valid, and we asked the same question, and most people there's about 5 or 6 pieces that are right in terms of, growth, demand, the wedge, farm cover, but right, the one piece that most in the competition miss is the residual, right? And on Patrick's farm, the residuals were good. When you look at the pre-grazing yield, it's lower than 1,300. So the message is very simple here. If you go in low, you can come out with a low residual. But if you go in high, you'll come out with a high residual. And, the high residual then is leading to sward quality issues. It's not helping the clover plants. It's not helping the utilization of grass going forward. So this is something that's consistent on Patrick's farm from the spring into summer into autumn, despite the challenges of weather. But the grazing infrastructure and the grazing management help overcome that to a degree. Now, this spring is a different story. We all know that. Patrick mentioned that getting paddocks grazed out has been difficult. We're starting to see that now, James. We're the 20th of May or 22nd, 23rd of May. The stem is coming, but we have to try and get this cleaned off as best we can, or we're going to face a difficult summer in terms of grass quality. Yeah.
Plans for 2024. I was talking to you last week. You've a certain amount of reseeding done already. What's your goal for 2024?
Look, we have all the receiving and oversowing that we're going to do this year done. And we've seeded 8 acres there with a red clover silage mix. That was last Thursday, and then 2 weeks ago we done oversowing clover on 3 paddocks. So one paddock that already has clover established in it, but it's just getting a bit light, so we oversowed that, and we tried another paddock that the indexes were high on, and we just give that a go. So yeah, look, they've both been grazed since at a 700 clover. There's clover there, so it's maintaining it now is the job. Yeah, so that's where we're at. There's a paddock there as well. Probably take it out later on in the year. I just didn't want to take out too much at the one time, just to drive cows under pressure, I suppose, if we did just take out too much grass at one time. So that's where we're at. Yeah.
Very, very good. Very good. The red clover, is that your first venture, or have you some?
Yeah, look, it's my first venture. Look, we said we'd give it a go, like that. Look, if we can cut back a bit of nitrogen, sustainability is all good, but economic sustainability is where we're at too, so it has to make sense that way too. So we'll give the red clover a go and see how we get on. Yeah.
I think Patrick got the award, but part of getting the award is he has to open his farm up to the public later in the year. Am I right in saying that?
That's part of the agreement, yeah. Which is the hard part for the farmer, James. Yeah, it's easy win the award and take the money, but there's the opportunity for everyone to see Patrick's farm and meet him and seeing what's going on in terms of what we describe. And while this podcast will help a lot, seeing is believing, as they say, James. And we have scheduled an event for the farm with Patrick on the last days of June 28th, 11 o'clock, Patrick, if you remember correctly.
Fair enough, 11 o'clock it is, so yeah.
Right. Just two other quick comments, James, before we round off.
Yeah.
Just we talked about grass and grass utilization. It's not often you meet someone that does a grass budget for the autumn and the spring, James. And that's one piece that myself and Aidan, who did that section of the competition, picked up on. And then the clover piece that Liz from the Department of Agriculture does with us in terms of judging. Patrick's approach to bloat. And bloat now is a conversation killer with clover, James, often. But Patrick had an approach with bloat on the farm that you don't often come across. If that's all right to say, Patrick, you use the orb, which is a device that releases bloat oil into the water. Do you want to say a piece about it before we finish off?
Yeah, look at it. It's a very simple little thing. You just pop it into the water trough. You set your cow numbers and you set your rate of rate of oil to be put out for the cows in the paddock. It's quite simple. Yeah, look, at touch wood, we've been very lucky now. We haven't had any issues with bloats since we started with clover in 18. So I think a lot of it is going from grass to clover. I think that could be a bit of the extreme as well. Like, going from a grass paddock to a clover paddock could bring on bloat more so. But I don't know, like, but look, that's what we have in place, and it seems to be working. So yeah,
there's a lot of information there. But as you say, John, there's an open day on the 28th of June. I've been on the farm a few times. As we said earlier, Patrick's been very, very modest. It's an excellent farm, very well run. Couple of things that stood out to me: do the simple things well and control the controllables. I think that's good, solid advice for everybody. So that's it for this week's episode of the podcast. I want to thank both John Maher and Patrick O'Neill for joining me on this week's show. As always, don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm James Dunne, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.